16, 1986, as James Still Day in Kentucky. In honor of this great 16th, 1986, as James Still Day in Kentucky. In honor of this great Kentuckian's 80th birthday and in grateful appreciation for his contributions to the arts. Done at the Capitol in the city of Frankfort this 14th day of July in the year of our Lord 1986, signed Martha Lane Collins, Governor of Kentucky. Mr. Still.
On July 16, 1986, writer James Still celebrated his 80th birthday, along with 400 or so guests, and a panel of poets, educators, filmmakers, and others, all paying tribute to a literary master who has devoted his career to writing about the people and places of his adopted Knott County home. Originally from Chambers County, Alabama, James Still moved to Knott County, Kentucky in 1931. Here he authored his novel, River of Earth, Pattern of a Man and Other Stories, and the Wolf Pen poems. Despite his success and recognition in the literary world, not all of his neighbors know what it is he does. Many simply know him as Jim, or that fellow over on Dead Mare Branch. Even a Knott County postmaster, who usually knows most of everything, hadn't heard of him. Listening to his own thoughts and the tributes paid him on his 80th birthday, it's evident his life and career have been pursued in a quiet, but not necessarily self-imposed modesty.
A good many years ago, I used the word modest in connection with Mr. Still, and he observed that modesty connotes something to be modest about. And I've been pondering that for about 20 years. It works both ways, I believe. A sly fellow is J. Still, who peers from the side of the hill. He spies on his neighbors from his gardenly labors, then retires his notebooks to fill.
I didn't expect to be any attention here around where I live, where people read, certainly in the past, virtually nothing, and have no books in their homes. I didn't expect to be read there. I might have thought that in the colleges and schools of the state, and some years back, that I might have thought that they would know I existed, but I decided it didn't and didn't worry about it. And somebody told me, you will just have to grow your audience, and I think I have. Somebody told me, they're not ready for you yet. Now, the reason I have not for a moment felt neglected is simply this. All this time I was publishing in the East, in the Atlantic Monthly, and the Yale Review, the Nation, New Republic, Esquire, these magazines. I've received awards, the O. Henry Prize stories, and various other awards, the American Academy, so I wasn't feeling too bad about that. No, and nobody should think that. I've had everything I could handle, really, in the way of honors.
I thought and was told that it would be very difficult to meet this man, and so I contrived over a period of a year, through artful devices, a meeting with this what I thought was going to be strange creature named James Still. I was told he was modest, reclusive, and self-denying, and I believed all that. And so I sent word up by this person and then that person that John Stephenson, who's a professor of this and that down at UK, would really like to meet you, and would it be all right? And the word came back, yeah, I guess it would be all right. So I arranged to come up here and picked up Mr. Still outside here in the parking lot, and we went down the road for lunch at the Pioneer, I guess it was. And after about a half a mile, I said, you know, Mr. Still, you don't strike me as being a modest person. And he said, "Who told you that?" He said, "There's not a modest bone in my body."
Have you any idea about the impact that you've had on the literary world?
I don't believe I do, and according to what people say, I don't bother about that. I'm the minute I write something, that's it for that time. I'm working on something else. For example, I'm sitting in the rocking chair that I never have time to sit in. It isn't just writing. I hope I have several strings to my bow. I'm interested in a great many things.
Now, I know you thought he was from Kentucky. He's really an Alabamian. And there are those that say that Jim Still brought from Chambers County, Alabama, where Simon Suggs lived, remember, a shifty streak as wide as the Chattahoochee River.
What is this shifty streak? What is Wade Hall? What's Wade Hall talking about there?
I think it's unpredictability. It's what might be expected of almost any, I would think, creative person, a writer. If you know the outcome of every story you're reading. No, some of my characters are a little shifty, I think, and they're trying to think that I'm also shifty. Perhaps I am. People often say they don't know what I'm going to say next or what I might be doing next. And that's all right with me.
A letter from Godey, Biggity Creek, July 16th. I might mention, for those who it's been a while, that Old Scratch is a mountain term for the devil. Mr. James Still, Dead Mare's Branch, Kentucky. Chum, I never slept me nary a wink last night. Old Scratch brought me the news that you're signing my name for yours. I didn't understand that until Mike told me that James Still has had the habit in recent years of signing some of his correspondence and notes and memos Godey Spurlock or Godey. Came clear to Biggity Creek. Biggity Creek, where heads are the size of water buckets, where noses are turned up like old shoes, women wear skillets for hats, and men screw their breeches on, and where people are so proper they eat with little fingers out, pointing, and one pea at a time. Old Scratch must have known before I'd live on Biggity Creek, I'd whittle me a bill and peck amongst the chickens. So that's where he sends me. That makes it mean. Anyhow, anybody with one eye and half sense would understand they couldn't steal my name and prosper. I'm a plain talker, and I'm telling you to your teeth, I'll not be slicked out of my good name. Now, it's not revenge I'm after. Of course, it does make a body feel a whole heap better. But give me justice. I know my rights. I wasn't born yesterday. Godey Spurlock coming up short ain't been heard of. I don't give knocks I can't take myself. Still, a beating is too fine for you. I want to see you dance, and if you're spoiling the hassle, well, come humping. I guess you thought I was deaf in one ear and can't hear out of the other. Never thought the news would get to Biggity Creek, I reckon. Signing my name for yours indeed. Idiots might swallow that, but not me. As soon as I heard, I got to work straight away. The quicker the medicine, the better the cure. Old Scratch gave me leave. He's keen for mischief. I'm about to offer you a chance too good to refuse. If you'll agree to come to Biggity Creek, you can keep using my name up there. I'll even let you run with my bunch. I'll guarantee you full measure. I can spare it if you can bear it. I've missed many a bucket of slop not being a hog. If not, you better leave Godey alone or I'll work on your dog hide. Suit yourself and sit on the shelf. Dynamite couldn't budge me. My opinion, when affairs get tough enough, you'll break over and come on down to Biggity Creek with me. Oh, by the way, happy birthday. Keep signing, Godey Spurlock.
In River of Earth, the narrator, who is unnamed, although I've heard Mr. Still say he has a name, but he's not telling, the narrator tells us, I was 7 on the 21st of May, and I remember thinking that the hills to the east of Little Car Creek had also grown and stretched their ridged shoulders, and that the beechwood crowding their slopes grew down to a living heart. And indeed, I think our home place has grown larger and deeper because of Mr. Still's perception of it.
George Ella Lyon said, our home place has grown larger and deeper because of James Still. And I thought that was very sweet and yet very deep of her to put that kind of dimension on you, James.
I like that statement, of course, and I also like the statement of a lady who was born in this county and lived here all her life, and she told me several years ago, I never really saw this place where I was born until I read River of Earth. I like that too.
We learn to cherish the natural language of the people because Mr. Still had said that he would never write a word that he could not spell himself, or he had not heard a neighbor speak. His calm confidence in his skill was balm on an open wound for this young man who had been raised on a farm but who had been so urbanely educated as to be made ashamed of the way country people speak. To hear Mr. Still use the words he did was a blessed assurance for one who could recall his own eager toes thrust with gladness into the soil, who knew of his own experience the special meaning of coming through a hard winter to scenes of cows calving in the lot. We learned to appreciate the value of creative work for its own self when we asked Mr. Still how many poems he had written, and he said he didn't know and he didn't plan to count them. I'm just a writer, he said. I write because I've got this feeling I have to get rid of. I've got to write because it's bothering me. I think we're all a lot richer for those troublesome thoughts.
These poems of mine are just, they're happenings. There is an anthology of poems coming out pretty soon, which is called A Made Thing. I took issue with the anthologist saying that I don't like to think of my poems as being made, mechanically made, because there are happenings. They just happen, sort of happen. I realize they've been working a long time in my subconscious or someplace. I hardly know where they come from, and they're written usually in 5 or 10 minutes at most. I might work them over or play with them for a while. You usually do, for that matter.
How many of you know the story, have read it? You're not going to get a grade on this. I just wanted to have read The Pattern of a Man. Oh, good, because you won't appreciate my few little remarks here, I'm afraid, if you have not actually read The Pattern of a Man. But I wanted to read you a little exchange. I don't know whether it would be The Pattern of a Woman or not, but we could call it Newport, Tennessee, February 5th, 1986. Mr. Mike Mullins, Hindman Settlement School, Hindman, Kentucky. Sir, I take my pen in hand to thank you for inviting me to be part of the Master Time, celebrating Mr. James Still's birth date come July. I have heard you aim to ask the whole push of Appalachian scholars and book-learned folks to speak their piece about Mr. Still. They'll all be there thicker than yellow jackets at a stir-off, because Mr. James Still is the very pattern of a writer the best of them like to ponder. For the rest of the bunch of witties that don't step up to his books and make his acquaintance, I say people like them ought to have their heads pinched off when they're born. You all know how to treat such a man and all of his friends. You'll treat them clever. But it'll plague you to recollect how some of them eat, downing at one sitting a half-gallon of buttermilk, a bowl of shucky beans, 2 potato onions, and 4 breakings of cornbread at one sitting. Now hear me. I'm putting the bee in your ear about them that has little minds and big stomachs. My opinion, the likes of them will shun the day and the lively time you plan. Faithfully, Wilma, Dykeman, Stokely. Newport, Tennessee, February 15th. Dear Dr. Mr. James Wayne Miller, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Your invitation to Mr. James Still's birthday party in July settles my mind about such a frolic, and now I'm all in a hump to be part of that day. It would take a tight-fisted turnkey or a stout lumberjim to fight me off. I've sized you and Mullins up, and that Jones fella, and I've sized you three up as sharp tacks, who know how to give honor where honor is due. I'll say no more for now. Your friend, Wilma Stokely. Newport, May. Dear Jim Wayne, Mike Loyal. Anybody out there? I have scanned the paper you sent around, naming them that will say words at James Still's master time. I saw the quality of that crowd quicker than hell can singe a feather. And I take my pen in hand to tell you I'm ready to play Quiet Bob at that affair. You must have me sized up as a witty of a widow woman if you're of a mind that I look with ease on speaking any words of interest at the end of such a feasty day. And I might have added at such an end of such a hot day. I'll plague you no longer for scattering your brains to the sparrows and getting me in such a gone. Sincerely yours, Mrs. James R. Stokely. July 1. The bunch arranging that master time, I gone as I feel, I've had a rabbit lick that sent me plumb sky-goggling. Now hear me. I've been racking my head for thought and my learning for words to pin down some plain, everyday explanation of that pattern of a man that is James Still. Friends, it can't be done. I tell you now, it's the best I can stand up to the truth instead of nursing some lie tale to tell you this. A writer man who can put ink to paper and make people seem so really like, who can speak the truth and turn pranks and weave all manner of spells, that you fellers, slick as dogwood for hoe handles, that feller is not the pattern of a man I'm going to examine or explain. I'm not going to try to take him apart and set him together again. I aim to discover and enjoy and rediscover and pleasure myself in the wonder of what that man does with blank paper and the scratchings of words. It's a mighty thing to ponder, come to think of it. Your friend and his, just Wilma.
I did have a pear tree here, and it died, and I had it chopped out yesterday. Removed yesterday.
Yesterday?
Mm-hmm. Had it removed yesterday. This one here, this is a Scotch broom. In the spring, before any leaves come out, this is covered with little yellow butterflies. And I had one here before, years ago, and when I planted it was quite small, and I got to cut a stick to mark it, and here is a stick.
Is that right?
That's right. That's a stick.
Is turning 80 cause for celebration?
Well, if it had been left up to me, I would have been here in this log house by myself, just doing the things I usually do. It almost had to be pointed out to me. And the celebration itself, which was beyond anything I had imagined. I thought maybe 25 people would come at most. And I had nothing to do with the planning of it, and I would have been overwhelmed, except for one thing, that I couldn't imagine it was happening to me. And it was a chance to bring people to come together who didn't know each other, friends of mine, and they got to meet each other, and it was a good opportunity for that. So I was just a part of it.
Those of you sitting out there this morning may have got the impression that James Still is a rather controversial fellow. There's
differences of opinion as just to what kind of fellow he is. Well, as Lyle says, I've been running with James Still various places, and the very fact that I've been running with him ought to dispel that notion that he's a recluse. I think I might be able to shed some light on this question. We've all been moving around the circle, you know, as the Frost poem says, we move around the circle and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. Here he sits this morning, and he's already on record as saying, people have told me that I'm an enigma. Woodrow Weinberg, who has known me for over 30 years, told me once he didn't understand me. I'm as simple as the sun. The only secrets I have are those of other people, my own vanity. I'm proud of my Phi Beta Kappa key, and when I feel especially ignorant, I wear it out of sight. Well, I see no reason why we shouldn't take Jim Still at his word. What more appropriate thing to do for a writer than to take him or her at his word? River of Earth is the title not only of his novel, but is the title of one of the poems in this collection. And although oftentimes he's speaking of a person in these poems in the third person, that person may well be James Still himself. As in this poem, he drank the bright air into his throat and cast a glance across the shattered thrust of hills. And he knew that of all men who slept and waked suddenly, he, least of all, could name this thing that held him here. He least could put the sound upon his tongue and build the spoken words that all might know and might speak themselves and might write in flowing script for those who come upon this place in curious search, knowing this land for what it is.
Do you think that in your comparisons of Alabama and Kentucky, that you have given these mountain people a better appreciation of what they have here?
Well, I'd like to think so, but I don't think of myself as an outsider. My mother was born in Foxfire country. I came here ready to write River of Earth. I didn't have to learn this language or anything like that. No, it was already had all that. And a little different, somewhat different, admittedly, but it gave me what we call the double vision. I think it would be difficult to live all your life in a place and not go away and write about it. You can't see it. In fact, I've been here so long, I think there are things I don't see anymore. I know that because occasionally in the notebooks I keep, I will hear something and it suddenly occur to me, this should be written down. It should be a notebook. But I've heard it many times, but hadn't recognized it as something that should be recorded.
I think you begin to see what his preferences are if you look through the poems in the Wolfbin poems. And one of the things that he prizes is that which is wild and untamed and that which is free. In the poem In Fair, in this collection, he's writing about the marriage of a mountain man and woman, and he describes them this way. He was sun-bronzed, resolute and free, who buckled his belt against the universe and challenged the taut rope of mortality. She, the sweet apples from high green orchards, the faint gray line of day within a purple land, the slender willow, the sudden piping voice, a crystal from the flint beds of the coves, whose strength lay in the wildness of her choice. Still's is the unhindered quest and the untamed heart.
I would like to think so. I don't want to get too civilized. Just that I don't want my yard here on Wolfbin Creek to look too much like a city lawn. I do have areas that are mowed with a lawnmower, but I've got plenty of places for birds and rabbits and black snakes if they want to live here. And I'm not just trying to live here. I want the little animals of the world to be here too.
Here is the best self-description I've been able to find of James Still, and it's in the poem called Of the Wild Man. I took it as the title of my remarks, and it's in the Wolfpen Poems. It will take a little while to find him. He may be in some unlikely place, lying beneath a haw, lost in leafy sleep, or atop a high field digging his keep. He's somewhere around. Go and look. It will take a little while to find him, for hunger drives no wild man home. Dark bays no hasting to a will like his. He may dine on berries and abide where he is. He's somewhere around. Go and look. Those are some of the qualities, I think, that you'll find that inform his work. And in addition to all that, I must say that I know him to be a forgiving man. Because one time, in my ignorance, I drove him to Concord, New Hampshire, when I should have driven him to Concord, Massachusetts, and he forgave me.
Being of these hills, being one with the fox stealing into the shadows, one with the newborn foal, the lumbering ox drawing green beech logs to mill, one with the destined feet of man climbing and descending, and one with death rising to bloom again, I cannot go. Being of these hills, I cannot pass beyond. And thank you for coming. I'll attend your 80th, if not in person, in spirit.